Gentlemen, I have a brain, despite what a lot of the comments might say. In my brain, I typically have an idea here and there. And one of those ideas is, what does the future of firearms technology look like? As a man fascinated by firearms, it is one that I think about often, and I'm sure it's one that you think about often. You probably have your thoughts on the subject, what you would like to see, maybe some of your hopes and aspirations for how this skill tree and technology branch of the firearms world develops. Now, why would I make this video? Well, I know for a fact you're probably doing one of two things. You're either on the can taking care of business, or maybe you're eating food, which is the highest honor you can give to a YouTuber. So if you are, a massive thank you, and the rewards you bestow upon me are not lost. If you're doing anything else, then I have no idea. Now, to understand where we're looking to go in the future as far as firearms technology is concerned, it's important to have a good understanding baseline of a firearm and how it functions. Guns, for the most part, are actually pretty simple, but if you're not a big gun guy or gal, to the three ladies that watch this, hi mom, then guns can be kind of confusing. I'm not a big car guy, and sometimes cars look scary and confusing to me, especially when directed by Michael Bay. Guns themselves are pretty darn simple. Here we have one of the most common weapons in the United States, an AR-15, or if you want to call it a CAR-15 variant. This is a Larry Vickers inspired clone. It's not 100% perfect, but we've had a video on it before on the channel. Now, guns themselves, how they operate, like I was saying, for the most part, very simple. If we go back to when they first started being introduced to European warfare or warfare in general, they realized they could take this powder called powder or black powder, put it inside of a container, put a projectile in front of it, ignite that propellant, the gunpowder, and send the projectile screaming out in a lethal speed. A speed so fast it would change warfare forever. The knight was the pinnacle of European warfare, and it was replaced by a peasant with a tube. Now, what we have on this AR-15 is a quick illustration of one of the more common weapons you'll find. You have one of the more important parts of the weapon, a tube with rifling inside of it, making a rifle. It spins the projectile, making it more accurate. You have an upper receiver, which houses the bolt. And then you have a chamber in there, and you have the low receiver, which has the mag, and then you have space for the bolt to travel when it recoils, because there is a gas system that runs underneath this handguard. You can kind of see it poking out right there, where it directly impinges on the bolt, recoiling the bolt, cycling around for it to fire again. Now, guns themselves, though they seem simple, the more advanced they have become, the more machining and tooling requirements that go into it. Now, that was a very rudimentary look at it. And semi-automatic guns are a little bit more of the advanced variety of firearms. So with other firearms, say a musket, right, where there's no cycling of the action, or to reload you have to pour your propellant and your projectile down the same barrel, or for a bolt action or a lever action where you have to manually cycle the action to make it fire, you still have to have space for that mechanism to travel. It can't be obstructed. Now, one of the purposes of firearms is for defense, and thanks to this video's sponsor, you can also defend your online footprint. Private internet access protects you from the prying eyes of hackers, internet service providers, and others that can view your personal data. Now, private internet access is a VPN, and it allows you to tap into stuff around the world that may be restricted in your area. Certain places in the world may have access to different Netflix shows at a different time than you. Private internet access allows you to protect an unlimited number of devices at the same time. It is available for all platforms: Windows, Mac OS, Android, Linux, iOS, and many more you can use. One private internet access subscription to protect an unlimited amount of devices at the same time. Your entire household with one subscription. Signing up for private internet access is risk-free. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, and 24/7 customer support is available. If you go to the custom link shown on the screen, the pinned comment, and the description down below, you'll get 83% off and 4 months free. That is just $2.03 a month for a VPN. Of course, a big thank you to Private Internet Access for sponsoring this video. Now, sci-fi guns themselves are pretty cool, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because it allows us to play with the thoughts and ideas of what future weapons will look like, because there's a massive industry of nerds programming stuff to make video games or entertainment for you, where we get to experiment with what they're doing, at least in our noggin. Generally though, when it comes to these science fiction weapons, they usually defy physics a lot of the times. If they're guns that fold up into themselves, if they're guns that hold way more ammo than possible, and generally they have ergonomics that don't make much sense. Or they have fencing in places that just make no sense. I'm looking at you, Halo guns, the DMR, there's a trigger guard, and then there's fencing around the trigger guard. It's redundant. You don't need that. Now, of course, I understand the whole sci-fi genre has to look cool. It has to create a universe in itself where it has the back lore. Like I know the Halo sci-fi guns have a whole manufacturer and back lore and development. Now, I would argue that there are some sci-fi guns that are actually practical. I think of the M41A pulse rifle from Aliens. Arguably, that's one of the more practical sci-fi guns. The biggest downside from reality is going to be the magazine capacity. What is it, 99 rounds? I think they downloaded. I'm totally spacing. For sure 95 rounds of 10mm caseless ammo. The reality of that is that kind of magazine is not going to be able to hold that much ammo of that caliber size. So it's defying physics in that sense. But with the power of camera cuts, you too can hold unlimited ammo inside your magazine. Another complaint I have for the M41 is going to be the magazine base plate itself. It just makes the practicality of things kind of weird when you have a massive base plate like that for a stick mag. Now, of course, I know the gun's built around the Thompson with an underbarrel 870 that they used with SPAS 12 railing on the underbarrel 870. I think the design of the M41A pulse rifle is actually pretty good for what it is. If you think about it, it kind of makes the Thompson better. Big complaint I have with the Thompson is how low that stock sits on the gun. When you can take the stock, make it in line with the bore, add a little bit of a carry handle, it actually becomes a relatively modern gun, and I like that a lot. The problem is it's not holding as much ammo as it say, and an underbarrel mounted shotgun / grenade launcher. It's kind of sick, so I'll take that. On this episode, I'm not going to go through the litany of sci-fi guns because there's a lot. Maybe if you guys really want, we can do another episode like going over sci-fi guns. I'm trying to keep it on track as it is, and I'm derailing. But Neil Blomkamp's Elysium actually has a very good approach, in my opinion, when it comes to the sci-fi guns, because they have their version's current firearms, and then they have firearms that are dated, which I think is a good approach to reality. If you look at conflicts today, you're going to have the pinnacle of fighting forces with the utmost modern tech, and you're going to see people that are going to have antiquated tech that's over 100 years old. And of course, the movie takes place in 2154. Now, I bring this up because there is the thumbnail gun behind me, all done up, the Elysium AK. It's gotta be one of my favorite sci-fi guns ever made, and it actually was a big part of the early administrative results videos way back in the day, when this channel was governed by a different person. Much better man than I. So there's a scene where they take down the billionaire's aircraft for the heist, to get inside his mind. The hack is Neuralink. Now, to bring the aircraft down, they use an 870, funny enough, with the Surefire 660 bulb on it. I think that's really funny that they still have that kind of flashlight over 100 years into the future. It's kind of sick. And then as the billionaire's guard robots dismount, they are met by Matt Damon with a AKM with an airburst round, which I think is actually pretty sick. So what to me that is, it's the advancement of ammunition that you can use in older firearms, making them more effective. Now, the reason I bring this up is because it's showing that the idea is in the future, we can have our same style of guns, but the ammunition has gotten better. The ammunition has evolved to become more lethal, where we can still hold on to the plethora of firearms that we have while gaining access to better bullets. Wow. And the HK XM25 was a 20mm airburst weapon fielded in the 2010s by the United States and Afghanistan. It saw some trials and it ultimately got phased out due to budget cuts, but it is a very interesting firearm because you can use a built-in rangefinder, a laser rangefinder on the gun, which will communicate with the bullets inside of the chamber, and the rotations of the round will ignite the airburst setting. If you're unfamiliar with what I'm talking about, it's in Battlefield 4. So I think is it Battlefield 4 or 5? No, sorry, not 5. Is it Battlefield 4? Yes, I think it's for sure in Battlefield 4. Now, airbursting stuff is pretty much going to rearrange and discombobulate you in the utmost microwavy of ways. It's probably some pretty nasty stuff. Now, I would guess we don't have the tech to make airburst 30 cal rounds just yet, unless DARPA or Area 51 is working on something that they're just not telling us. And who knows when we'll get that tech leaked out to the public. So sometimes what has appeared in the future is actually not that far off. I would assume that that technology would be coming around the pipe as warfare advances rapidly. Now, what will guns look like in the future? Now, the sci-fi guns can kind of give us a conceptual idea. We can play with certain notions, we can play with certain ideas, we can look at stuff, and to the gun guys, you can see things and instantly say, okay, that's more plausible, or hey, that's not as plausible. Like when I look at the Halo assault rifle, I see a massive canoe of a gun. They are just large firearms. If you look at the show, they are all massive guns. That's not really comfy to run around and wield if you have to hump it around on foot. Or there are other like Mass Effect guns where those guns fold inside of themselves, or the guns in general that fold inside of themselves. It's just like, how? How do you defy physics like that? If that was the case, then there's going to be some very hollow feelingness to that firearm. And it would be arguably wasted space because we do have guns that fold into themselves. Like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 players should know about the Magpul FMG9, a folding gun that pops out. It's actually pretty cool. It's a cool little pistol chassis and I'm very nostalgic for it, even though it's just like a rectangle. But there are rules and laws. There's thermodynamics to physics. There is math to this that is much higher than my pay grade.
In this house, we obey the laws of thermodynamics.
Now, we actually have seen future weapons before. Back in the 80s, the military was looking to replace the M16. There were complaints where soldiers, due to the fatigue and stress of the battle space and the physical strain, they weren't being as accurate as they could be, so the military dumped millions and millions of dollars into a program to replace the M16 with the M16. That's essentially the cliff notes. But there was a number of different rifles submitted. We got the HKG-11 out of those trials, a caseless ammo. Now, caseless ammo does pop up a lot of times in the sci-fi trend, rightfully so. How the caseless ammo works is that there is no case. Go figure. Viewer, you got a gold star if you guessed that. The case itself is the propellant.
We fire the whole bullet. That's 65% more bullet per bullet.
But it did have some downsides. Now, the gun, I believe, was cleared for use, but that thing is a very complicated looking weapon. I have zero time with an HKG-11. When Ian McComa Forgotten Weapons pulls out the internals, it looks like a freaking watch. It's very complicated to my dumb brain. When it comes to soldiering, it's really important that weapons stay simple. It's not a dig on soldiers, because soldiers are actually very well-skilled craftsmen. Guys in the infantry are very good, violent individuals, and they are smart dudes. But there is a saying, keep it simple, stupid. And Murphy's Law exists. If it can go wrong, it will go wrong. So having simple tools is a big benefit. Getting into the future, I would say simpler gun equals better. Ultimately, the military realized, hey, you know what we need is soldiers to just probably have a magnified optic. That's pretty much all they realized, and then the ACOG became a staple in the military. Fun fact, play a World War II shooter like Hell Let Loose and get a sniper rifle. You'll realize how powerful magnification is in a force-on-force setting. Who would have thought? Another example of that would be with the NGWS program, where it's kind of like history repeating itself, except this time there actually was a selected winner. But there was a number of different guns that were submitted, some with polymer ammo, some with polymer encased ammo, and then of course the hybrid cases, which allows for higher pressure. And the SIG Spear was ultimately selected, chamber in 6.8 or 277 Fury. Now, the reason they went with the 6.8 round was to defeat body armor threats. The military was looking for a very fast round with enhanced penetration capabilities. So they pretty much returned to the battle rifle style of weapon. Now, if you're also, again, unfamiliar with different types of weapons, which I don't think you would be if you watch this channel, but just in case, there are pistols, submachine guns, shotguns, rifles, assault rifles, battle rifles, DMRs, sniper rifles, and then explosive delivery payloads. There's some other crossovers in between, but you have a wide litany to choose from. Now, the AR-15 is in the intermediate cartridge family. It uses a 5.56. It's what the military has been using pretty much since Vietnam, and the military was looking to replace that. So they go with a battle rifle platform. At least that's what I like to call them. Essentially, they're chasing enhanced distance, range, lethality at the cost of ammo that you can carry. With those bigger rounds, you can carry less ammo just due to the weight in general, along with the rest of your fighting load. So that's typically a thing within the science fiction world. They don't often take into account the human element, where you can only carry so much ammo, or you have to actually carry this stuff around in a battlefield. Now, my dream guns in the future, right? What would the dream gun be? It'd be kind of like a do-it-all gun, but the problem is if it's good at everything, it excels at nothing. Now, I would say part of my theory for how future technology will look like when it comes to weapons, there's a few different ideas that I have. One may be the Elysium approach, where you have ammo that is even more lethal than, say, a standard round would be. Another idea I have is increased technology that goes along with the hardware of firearms. I could see that guns and ballistics may advance, we'll get faster rounds, we'll get more efficient bullets. Now, one thing that I see is the technology increasing along with it. Optics doing the math for you to hit a target at range. Vortex is already working on that optic, and it's already existing and being fielded, and it's being used on the new SIG Spear, which won the NGWS program. I don't know what's going on at SIG and the military, but they have a really good relationship. What's going on over there? How'd he get the inside on the Wayne board? Is he sleeping with someone? How'd SIG do it? That's another route that I can see. Having technology making you as a shooter much more lethal, giving you the tools you need on the fly to make precision, accurate shots, getting the most bang for your buck out of your combat load. That new SIG Spear uses a much heavier round, or a much bigger round, I would say, than the 5.56, meaning you have to carry less ammo. Another idea for how the future will look is just outright sci-fi looking guns, laser guns, rail guns, which don't get me started on rail guns because I like the idea of the technology. It's just gonna take a lot of batteries. Coil guns, plasma guns, all that different sci-fi stuff, right? There's the idea that it can exist, but it's the required power to make it reliable and lethal and man-portable. So the future is still in the hands of the current drones. Good job, FPV drones. That's also a whole nother future itself. Technology is evolving. The world is getting more dangerous as we know it. You no longer just have to worry about a good old Kraut with his MG42. Now, personally, I would say my dream future firearm is something that's just very lightweight, rugged, reliable, and super simple, and delivers projectiles very accurately, and I can carry a bunch of ammo. The dream is like a very small bullet that is very ballistically lethal. What technology needs to go into that? I have no idea. If a bullet the size of a 22 had the ballistic capabilities of, say, a 5.56, that'd be pretty cool. Maybe it's some sort of caseless ammo that needs to get the job done. All that to say, the future will happen at some point. Firearms technology will evolve. There will be another leap at some point. In our heads, we can grasp the idea, but we don't have what it is exactly that it will happen. A big part of all of this has to do with logistics and manufacturing. I guarantee you they can make some pretty crazy one-off stuff, but when it comes to issuing it out to a massive army with a massive logistical pipeline, that's where things become more complicated. And the stuff that we already have is tried and true, and we know it works, and we know it's very lethal as it is. So that's where all of this kind of comes into play. Ultimately, I would say this is a bit of a yap fest where we're pontificating over the future of how we're going to melt our fellow man, but nonetheless, it is one that I think is rather interesting. So hopefully I filled the time where you were on the toilet or eating your food appropriately. Gentlemen, I have nothing else for you. I will catch you on the flip.